Hi everyone, welcome to my review of Masaki Kobayashi's Harakiri in 1962. Here is the Blu-ray and of course Masters of Cinema, spine number 20, and we are here to review this film. Now this is a film that I've been looking forward to seeing for at least, in terms of actually planning out to get this, about 5 years and watching it. And I'd heard about it before this, but yeah, mainly 5 years of just literally really wanting to get a hold of this. And of course, I actually bought this Blu-ray 2017, so it's actually been in my collection for quite some time, without me actually kind of watching this. So it's the first view here, and of course Harakiri, massive reputation behind this. Of course, it is one of the most acclaimed films of all time. It's got an 8.7 on IMDb. It's got a 4.5 I believe on Letterboxd. So them two sites, literally. Some of the very best, of course, it's not actually in the top 250 on IMDb because it's not got enough votes, but it's got an 8.7, 100% Rotten Tomatoes. This is known, on polls and everything as one of the very best films ever made, and certainly, the best Kobayashi, along with The Human Condition, which is another film that I've got, I haven't seen. I probably look forward to that, even more than this, to be honest. And yes, this film, I watched it tonight. I had massive, high hopes for this. I thought, there's not really a chance that I'll dislike the film, really. But I just want to see how much I love the film, and kind of just how good this is, and see this guy's style. Kobayashi, I've never seen any of his films before. And of course, Japanese cinema, for me, apart from at times British cinema, and of course American cinema, personally, I think Japanese cinema is the best, apart from those. And it's really is something else. You've got Ozu, you've got Kurosawa, Miyazaki, all in my top 16 directors, with Ozu being my favourite Japanese director of all time. He's made some of my very favourite films, especially Tokyo Story and Early Summer. And this film, of course, directed by Kobayashi. I didn't really know anything about his style, although I had heard that some people were saying, that Sergio Leone was maybe influenced by him, which of course influenced so many other people, including Tarantino. So I was very interested to see this film, the basic plot, and many sites explain it in a very convoluted way, but it's basically two main characters, really. One of them, Chizuwa, basically a younger guy, goes to this kind of to this clan's kind of palace, and wants to commit Harakiri, which is basically an act, by a samurai mainly, where they kind of commit suicide, basically, by disemboweling themselves. Now, yes, very, very graphic, and dark stuff here, and actually really, really violent, this film. One of the scenes is one of the most disgusting scenes I've ever seen, and it really is, it's a great scene, but it really is disgusting. I was pretty shocked at that, but yes, he goes and he wants to do this, and you've also got another character, played by Tatsuya Nakadai. He's basically the main character of the film, and yes, he does the same sort of thing. Now, after the first act, basically, the younger guy, kind of Chizuwa, he goes through with it, because the clan basically force them to go through with what they say. If they say basically they want to commit Harakiri, then they have to go through with it. Of course, the younger guy basically doesn't really want to go through with it, really, and then of course he's forced to do this with a bamboo sword. So you can kind of put that together and see, you can kind of guess what happens there. That's very early on, around about the half an hour mark or so, and then of course the rest of the film is Tatsuya Nakadai going in to do the same thing, but it doesn't pan out exactly the same way for him, and you find out very early on that the two characters are linked. He's basically the father-in-law of this younger guy, who's gone there to do the same thing. And yes, basically the rest of the film is told through flashbacks, you could say, over different period of time between 1619 and 1630, really. Of course, this is still feudal Japan, so it's very, very interesting time period, of course. A lot of Ronins, masters of samurai, basically. And of course, it deals with all these different themes that you would expect from this sort of time period. Really, really interesting stuff. And yes, a really intriguing plot. This is something that rarely has ever really been explored in cinema, in this way. Suicide, really, and of course honour and stuff comes into play. Themes of family are explored in this film, and yes, this, I will say, it's not one of the best films ever made for me. I don't quite agree with that. But then some people don't say, 2001: A Space Odyssey is one of the best films ever made. I do, so I think not everyone's going to admit, not everyone's going to agree basically that kind of, on a top 100 films of all time, it's not going to happen. I don't personally feel this is one of the top 100 films. I don't think it's a masterpiece, but I do think this is a great film. And actually, it's definitely one of the most unique films for sure. I've never seen suicide explored in this way, and just the whole kind of shocking nature of this film. It's definitely I've never seen this in Japanese cinema for sure. This is something that's very very twisted in many ways, but again, it's done in. It's basically, yes, it's very very unique and very kind of twisted and weird. But again, it is a great film. I think it does have some flaws. I think there is some flaws in the narrative, and I don't think I really got invested consistently to give this kind of full marks at all. I think the characters, apart from Tatsuya Nakadai's character, I think none of them are really great characters. I think the themes that are explored are done in ways that you could definitely consider them, masterful. But the characters for me fall a bit short, and actually the overall, just the overall emotional attachment I had to the film, apart from moments here and there, wasn't quite on point to give it, top end of the 9 mark. I think actually the greatest strengths of this film is to singly say what is the best thing about the film. For me, it's the cinematography. It's some of the best cinematography I've ever seen. No denying that. I can understand if someone says it's one of the top 100 films based on that. I think the way it's shot is something else. I think the style I was noticing, yes, very Sergio Leone-esque. You can see definitely. You can link the kind of the duels in this with the swords very much to the duels with guns in the Leone films. Maybe not as much Once Upon a Time in the West, but definitely the Dollars trilogy. You can kind of see the similarities there, especially Fistful of Dollars, the kind of low key duels of that. I think it's definitely the zooms and everything. You can see even Tarantino. You can definitely compare them, and it's very very interesting to see that. And this style is wonderful. You have many, many long shots. You have a lot of tracking shots. Very horizontal tracking shots. They are wonderful. They really are. This is some of the best cinematography I've ever seen. It really is something else. The tracking shots combined with the kind of the close-ups, the zooms, crash zooms really, and it's just the long shots, the way it kind of holds the camera to kind of build the sense of tension, the atmosphere. When you combine all these techniques, it really is something else. The style here is wonderful. I love the editing overall, the way it flashes in between different times. It's really something else. It doesn't really break the flow in that sense with the editing at all. It's just for me, some of the early points when they're in this kind of palace. It's, for those of you who don't know, it is mainly set in its present day time. Kind of, it is meant to be. It's basically set in this palace, and then you've got recounting of these stories. So it's kind of one location at times, and I think at first, the first sort of until maybe that scene, it was slightly bit flat for my liking emotionally, and it's never, as I say, it does have some flaws throughout the rest of the film with the emotional connection I have with the film. I don't think at times I think it had more potential there to kind of invest me more. Emotionally, I did think at times it was a bit cold for my liking. Yes, it's meant to be very, very dark and stuff, and it is meant to show the inhumanity of the samurai and the kind of honours, that you can say. It shows that side of it. But again, I think even still, it does, certainly the first half of the film, a lot of it, in the palace scenes, you could say a little bit cold for me. Even just the way that kind of the whole Harakiri scene went out, kind of went down. I think actually the way that they're kind of reacting and stuff. Even yes, it is trying to show how that is cold and how it's wrong and stuff. It still came across as a very very quite a few cold sequences for me. But nevertheless, that's not really an objective thing. I think that's more subjective. That's more about my personal connection. I would like it to be more warm and stuff, more hopeful, certainly as well. The rest of the film picks up, I think, after the sort of 40-minute mark. You start seeing more and more flashbacks. Tatsuya Nakadai's character, and really that is some great stuff in there. I think it really kind of moved me in many spots. Very, very human, and of course, then a bit more hopeful. Definitely, I don't think this is a hopeful film at all. Really, overall, it's not one that I can say that I thoroughly loved. The rating I'll give it, great rating, is more than a bit more than my enjoyment. I still really, really like the film. I think I loved the film overall, but I did love the final act of the film. That's when really it comes together really wonderfully. You've got actually for me, some of the greatest action scenes in cinema. And of course, yes, that is more action heavy in the final act, and there is actually more emotion at times as well. But yes, it starts to pick up, as I say, the first act would probably be 4 stars kind of thing, if I was to round it and stuff. The rest of the film picks up, and it starts introducing more, themes of family. The flashbacks, very beautiful. Actually, the kind of potential for the way this film was shot actually, heightens even more. I think when it's kind of exterior shots outside of the palace, that's when it really is some of the best cinematography I've ever seen. The kind of one of the later fights in the film, of course, the very, very famous pictures, of course, outside, with the grass, of course, blowing in the wind and stuff. That is legendary. It really is. The whole duel is just wonderful. And actually, for me, the final battle is even better than that. So it's something else. The final act of the film, the way it's shot, edited, and just the overall energy in that and stuff, and the kind of it's very, very tragic as well, of course. But when when it ended, I thought I don't think I love the film overall. I have some problems with it, of course. Some of the flow of the film at first, within that palace, is just a bit flat for me. My overall investment, and I just think it could have been more compelling. It could have been more kind of investing at first. It took a while for me to really care about even Tatsuya Nakadai's character. But again, once the film goes on, it does open up. It opens up its heart as well. There's some heart there, of course. Overall, I don't think I would say this is a really warm film, as I say, but it does open up, and it does become more human as the film goes on. I can see what it's trying to do, of course, with the way it kind of is structured and what it's trying to say. It's just I don't think really the execution, certainly the first act of the film, is really up to the levels that I would say is kind of a 5-star, 10 out of 10 film. Definitely not. And yes, I don't think. I think there's maybe a couple of bits where one of the characters went a bit too over the top as well in the acting. But really, the acting overall is one of the best things about the film. It's just some of the characters, actually, the way they're written, the overall kind of coldness of the film at times, and just the overall, some of the bits with the narrative just take a while to actually get me really invested, basically. I think it is a great film, only just, because, the cinematography, the editing is some of the best I've ever seen. And it is a very, very powerful film. It's just, in what it's trying to say, its themes, the way they're explored, it's really something. I think there isn't really much music. That would probably be another con, the way the music plays out. But it does, I think it's definitely great in the action, the way it's used. But there's moments early on, another thing, it just feels a bit flat because there's not really, as well, any music to kind of let the film flow and kind of feel alive. You could say it's very, very, very minimalist at times, which is fine. At times, I think in cinema, but this is a bit too much for me. I think it is just kind of makes the film a bit flat at first, but then, as I say, it picks up massively. The emotion behind it, the kind of the humanity of it all comes through more, and of course, the final act does not disappoint. Massive, battle scene at the end. The sword fight is stunning. It really is, and of course, you've got the kind of very, very haunting ending as well. And yes, I think the atmosphere achieved through this, the cinematography alone is just wonderful. It's just really the narrative at times, and some of the characters, stuff, and just the overall kind of emotional attachment I had wasn't quite there to call this, a great film. And actually, as I say, my enjoyment would probably be, in the very good sort of area. But I do think because of how well made this film is, cinematography, the editing, and stuff, and the acting, is something that is truly stunning from Tatsuya Nakadai. You've got some of the legendary fight scenes in cinema. So yeah, I think actually, and because the second half of the film is, it's definitely great. I have to say, it's a great film. But I don't think It's quite a film that I love overall. My opinion, of course, this is one of the most acclaimed films, but you know, not everyone agrees. With that. I think it's very, very acclaimed. It's one of the most acclaimed, but some people don't like 2001. As I said, I love the film. I think it's one of the 10 best films ever made for me. But this one, I just don't agree with it. I think I'm just one of the people who don't think it's one of the best films ever made. Personally, I can maybe see why people would say that. It's so unique and so kind of shocking in what it's trying to say and stuff. And of course, very, very powerful stuff here. Of course, the way it's shot, the way it's edited, and the action, of course, in the final act, it's something else. It's among the greatest. But overall, as a film, in terms of its narrative, in terms of its characters, and just the actual emotion behind it, my connection with the film, not one of the best for me. But yes, I'd have to give it a 90% critical rating. That's objective rating there. As I say, it'd be a bit less from overall enjoyment of the film, but I really liked this film. There was, of course, moments and kind of acts of the film that I certainly loved. The final act, I really loved. I was so invested. I was so kind of on the edge of my seat, and of course, the way that the fights played out were just stunning. Really was. Of course, the ending as well, very, very haunting ending, and very, very tragic. Of course, it did give me kind of it moved me definitely, basically, in the final act, and the way it ended. But I think overall it just falls a bit short of that to be called one of the best films ever made, certainly. But yes, Harakiri. I don't think it's as good as some would say. I'm not saying it shouldn't be that, but I think I don't quite think it's one of the best films ever made. But definitely a great one. I think there were some masterful moments in this. Overall, while not a masterpiece, definitely a great film. Highly, highly recommend it. Of course, it really is a great film. It's just it's very, very unique and kind of it's doing something that's very, very kind of powerful, and what's saying about honor and stuff and traditions. It's very, very interesting there. Of course, feudal Japan as well. It's kind of such an interesting kind of period, and I think so definitely recommend it. Of course, pick up the Blu-ray, of course, if you can. And yes, Harakiri reviewed. Cannot wait to, of course, review The Human Condition. And see some more. Samurai Rebellion, Quaidan. They're kind of his big 4 films. Although Human Condition, some people would call that 3 films. But yes, I've got that, of course. We'll be watching that probably in the next 2 months, I would say, and of course reviewing that. Who knows? I might like that even more than this. That may be my favourite, or maybe Samurai Rebellion. But this one, I think, is a great film, but not one of the best films ever made. But yes, of course. Tell me your thoughts in the comments. And yes, thanks for watching my review.